The stars above Earth were quiet. For years, Earth had stayed away from the wars of the galaxy. While other alien empires fought over power, space, and pride, humans chose to stay silent. They built their homes on peaceful planets. They watched, they learned, but they never joined the fight. One of Earth's most beautiful colonies, Elysian Prime, floated far away near the edge of a blue nebula. The colony had lakes like mirrors, cities full of green towers, and people who laughed under twin suns. It was Earth's dream, peaceful, strong, and free. Ships came and went, carrying food, science tools, and music. No one expected anything to go wrong. Then, one day, everything changed. At first, the communication lines from Elysian Prime went silent. Not a warning, not a word, just ... nothing. Earth's stations tried calling, sending emergency signals, even using old channels, but the colony did not reply. Satellites showed a strange flash, a bright light, then smoke. The planet's green lights went out, then more flashes. The stars around Elysian Prime began to shift. Ships were seen, but they didn't have human designs. They were sharp, dark, and cold. Back on Earth, people gathered in control rooms. Scientists stared at the screens. Officers spoke in quiet voices. Something had happened, something bad, but no one knew who had done it. Earth's leaders held a private meeting. They didn't want panic. They said maybe it was a power failure or a natural event, but some people knew better. The images didn't lie. In a quiet lab near the Arctic Circle, an old computer turned on by itself. It had been shut down for over 200 years. Dust covered its surface. Its lights blinked red. A small mechanical arm moved, checking systems that hadn't been used in generations. Then, a voice, soft and slow, whispered from its speaker. Colony breach detected. Stand by for Earthfire protocol. No one was there to hear it. Deep under the oceans, near an old military base, now turned into a museum, a steel door clicked. The systems behind it were supposed to be offshut forever. But now, lights inside turned green. A hum began to rise, soft at first, then steady. Something was waking up. Earth had built these systems long ago, before it chose peace, back when humanity feared the stars and wanted to protect itself at any cost. But as peace grew, those old weapons were buried, hidden from the world. People forgot. History books removed their names. Scientists focused on building, not breaking. Earth was no longer a place of power. It was a place of peace. But peace, sometimes, has a price. Dr. Emra Lin stood alone in a deep space observatory, looking at the last picture of Elysian Prime. She wasn't a soldier. She studied old things, lost languages, ancient systems, and strange codes. But what she saw on the screen made her heart beat faster. In the corner of the image, just before the screen went black, a shape appeared. It was circular, glowing, and looked like a human signal, but older than any she had seen. She opened her old research files. Years ago, she had studied something called Earthfire, a program lost in time, whispered about in secret. Her teachers told her it was just a myth, but the shape in the image matched the Earthfire seal exactly. She looked up. The stars above didn't shine the same anymore. At that moment, a vibration passed through the Earth. Most didn't feel it. Some thought it was just a small ground shift. But in places forgotten by time, in deserts, under mountains, inside frozen valleys, machines, long buried, began to stir. Something had been sleeping, something made by humans, and it was waking up. The people of Earth still believed silence would protect them. They didn't know what had been broken. They didn't know what had been touched. But deep below, in the old systems where light had not reached in centuries, the countdown had already begun. The stars above Earth were still quiet, but not for long. Dr. Emra Lin couldn't sleep. She sat alone in her small research lab, the soft glow of old data screens lighting her face. Outside, the night was still, but her mind raced. The strange signal she had found from Elysian Prime wasn't just noise, it had structure, rhythm, and a mark that didn't belong in modern databases. She kept looking at the symbol again. It looked like an old Earth design, an overlapping triangle and circle with a single line through the center. She remembered seeing it once before, buried deep in forgotten history files from an abandoned archive. Back then, it was labeled Earthfire Initiative. There was no clear explanation, just redacted pages in locked folders. But now it was calling back. Emra wasn't a soldier or a leader. She had always preferred quiet places, books, and questions that no one else wanted to answer. But this time, something was different. The quiet didn't feel safe. It felt like waiting. She loaded the old file again, bypassing old security layers with codes not used in decades. Finally, a voice message unlocked. "If this file has activated," the voice said softly, "then the outer wall has been broken. Earth must prepare." She leaned back, heart pounding. What wall? What system was watching the stars when humans forgot to? Suddenly, a second message appeared. It wasn't on her system, it came from outside, unknown origin. The message wasn't text, it was coordinates. A location deep in the ocean, far below an old naval site long shut down. She didn't wait. She packed a small bag, sent a message, to no one in particular, and boarded a private ship toward the ocean site. No one stopped her. No one even noticed her leave. As the small ship hovered above the dark water, the sky grew heavy. Clouds thickened, but the ocean stayed still, almost too still, like it was listening. The ship lowered a diving pod. She climbed in, unsure what she would find. The pod sank into the deep blue, deeper than any usual dive. Past fish, past wrecks, past memory. Then, her screens went dark. Total blackout, no controls, no light. Just silence, and then light. A single beam ahead, not from the pod, but from somewhere below. The pod shifted on its own, slowly moving toward the glow. The light led her to a platform, metallic round, covered in strange markings. The pod stopped and opened. Cold water pressed around her, but the light pulled her forward. She stepped out and walked. Her feet touched something solid, but not natural, not rock. It was smooth, warm, alive. The center of the platform lit up. A voice spoke again. "Earthfire status. Partial activation. Human ID required." Her voice shook as she answered. "Dr. Emra Lin, historian." The platform accepted it. Voice print confirmed. "Welcome, witness, witness." She didn't understand. But the platform began to move. Slowly, it carried her downward, into a dome she hadn't seen before. Inside were screens, hundreds of them, showing stars, colonies, human cities, alien traffic, and glowing red dots near Earth's outer rim. Each red dot pulsed, not random, not friendly. The voice continued. "Centuries ago, humanity locked away its final defense. Earthfire was never meant to wake unless all colonies were touched. That moment has arrived." She stood frozen. "Why me?" The answer came without pause, because only a peaceful mind could open the gate. Emra's heart beat faster. She had no weapon, no training, but she understood now this wasn't about war. This was about awakening something meant only for protection, never for harm. A memory, locked by those who feared what power could do. Now calling for a careful hand. Earth had chosen her. Above. On the surface, strange vibrations moved across the oceans. On distant worlds, a few alien observers noticed changes in Earth's energy fields. Their ships recorded strange data, small pulses from deep within the planet, like a heartbeat growing stronger. But they ignored it. They thought Earth had stayed silent too long. They didn't realize silence can also mean watching. And now, it was listening back. The platform stopped deep below the ocean floor. The walls around Emra lit up in soft white and blue, like calm breathing. Everything felt alive, but in a quiet way, like the place had been waiting patiently for someone to return. She stepped into a large, round chamber. At the center was a seat, simple in shape, smooth like glass but made of metal she couldn't recognize. Lights circled slowly above it, and patterns danced beneath her feet like moving sand. A soft tone played, and the same voice returned. "Human presence confirmed. Earthfire awakening. 23%. She moved closer to the seat, unsure of what it was or what it would do. As she touched the edge, the lights grew brighter. Not in a blinding way, like the room had just taken a breath. "I don't understand," she whispered. The voice replied gently. "You don't need to understand. You only need to listen." Suddenly, the air shimmered, and a large screen floated in front of her. It showed the history of the stars, rise, the first colonies, the promise of peace. Then, slowly, the story shifted. Small wars among other species, humans staying quiet, always stepping back. But then, the red lights, one by one, they showed the colonies going dark. Not just Elysian Prime, others, places not even in the news yet. She gasped. They're being taken one by one. The system responded, Earth is the final key. If it falls, all light ends. Emra felt the weight of those words. She had spent her life reading about forgotten things. Now she was inside one of them. But this wasn't history anymore. It was now. Another panel lit up. This one showed a map of Earth. Circles appeared over the poles, the mountains, the deserts, hidden facilities. The voice said, built before memory, protected by silence. She leaned in. Why hide all of this? The reply came after a pause. Because the builders feared themselves. They knew one day, peace would be stronger than pride, and only when kindness was in danger should the system return. She turned to the seat. It wasn't meant for control. It was for connection. Without speaking, she sat down. The moment her body touched the chair, lights wrapped around her like soft threads. Her heart slowed. Her thoughts opened. She saw stars, systems, signals, everything at once. But it didn't hurt. It felt like reading a story written in light. Then, a shape, a being, not real but part of the system. A holographic image. An old man, wearing a robe, marked with the Earthfire symbol. You found us, he said kindly. Not with force, but with care. That means it's time. Emra asked softly. What am I supposed to do? He smiled. Tell the stars that Earth remembers. Then, everything faded. The lights returned to normal. The seat powered down, but the air had changed. Somewhere above, in the real world, systems had begun to blink back to life. In a quiet orbit around the moon, an old satellite that hadn't moved in over a century started turning. Its lens opened. Its signal flared to life. In a desert, sand began to fall inward as something below shifted. In an ice-covered mountain, frost cracked open on a long-forgotten surface. Earthfire wasn't one machine. It was a network, built for silence, built for peace, but ready, if ever needed. And now, because of a single person who chose to listen instead of fear, it had returned. Back in the chamber, Emra stood up. Her steps were steady. Her heart no longer raced. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a messenger, outside. The waters above her rippled softly, and in the distance, past stars and empty space, watchers from other worlds noticed small changes around Earth, but they didn't speak of it. They had always thought Earth was quiet. They never guessed it had only been waiting. Far above Earth, in the silent sea of stars, ships drifted in dark formation. They did not belong to humans. Their shapes were smooth and sharp, like flying stones wrapped in metal. Inside the largest one, a tall alien figure stood on a glass-like floor, hands folded behind his back. General Curix had watched Earth for years. He had read every report, every pattern, every transmission. Earth was slow to speak, slow to act. Their colonies were beautiful but quiet. Their leaders talked about peace more than strength. To Curix, Earth was soft, kind, yes, but weak. He had seen how other species had grown louder, more aggressive. The galaxy was changing. The old rules were breaking. Silence in his eyes was the same as surrender. But now, something didn't make sense. One of his scouts entered the control room. General, the scout said, bowing. A signal has appeared. Curix turned. From where the scout pointed to a small glowing dot on the map, Earth's side of the system, but not from any known human base. It's old, not just old, ancient. Curix narrowed his eyes. Show me. The screen displayed waves of light, not language, but rhythm, almost like music. The scout continued. It doesn't come from any station we've seen before, and it's waking more systems. Waking, Curix repeated. The scout nodded. Power grids, satellites, even a few signals from the moon's dark side, all unused for over 100 cycles. Curix stared at the data. Impossible. Earth has no such systems. But the data didn't lie. In that moment, another ship near the Earth's orbit went dark. Not destroyed, just frozen. Its systems no longer responded. Its engine stopped. It floated, blinking, as if it had simply fallen asleep. The crew on Curix's command ship whispered, "Is it a weapon?" "No explosion," one said. "No heat," said another. The ship hadn't been hit. It had been ... quieted. Kurix stood still, thinking deeply. Perhaps Earth isn't what we thought. Meanwhile, down on Earth, Emra walked through a long hallway of glass and silver inside the hidden Earthfire chamber. Her steps echoed lightly. All around her, panels were coming to life. Screens showed peaceful colonies, warning messages, and distant objects approaching Earth. But nothing here looked like war. There were no weapons in sight, only information maps, voices, energy readings. Earthfire didn't threaten, it watched. A screen beside her showed Kurix's fleet. One by one, red dots turned blue. Earthfire was not attacking them, it was seeing them, understanding them, and then changing them. Emra touched the screen. The image zoomed in on one of the alien ships. Inside, she saw confusion, lights dimming, controls slowing, fear but not from damage. From the unknown, the Earthfire voice returned. Observation complete. Reaction, hesitation. Emra whispered, "They don't know what's happening. They were not meant to." The voice replied, "Earthfire is not to destroy. It is to reveal. Reveal what that Earth remembers." Another map opened. This one showed Earth's forgotten systems, weather control stations, orbital mirrors, deep space sensors, energy shields, things humans had hidden, thinking they'd never need them again. Emra understood now. These weren't weapons. They were choices. Earth had chosen not to use them, but that didn't mean they were gone. She turned to the center console. The lights dimmed slightly. A panel opened. "Would you like to send a message?" The voice asked. Emra hesitated. What could she say that wouldn't bring fear, that wouldn't be taken the wrong way? Then she remembered the first message Earthfire had given her. She spoke clearly. "We are not your enemy, but we are not alone. Earth is awake." The message was sent. Back in space, General Kurix heard it. The voice was soft, not angry, not loud, but something in it made him stop. His officers looked at him. "Should we continue forward?" one asked. He said nothing for a long moment. Then quietly he replied, "No, not yet. Watch and wait." For the first time, the fleet stopped moving, and far below, Earthfire waited to come, patient and still watching. The wind over Earth's northern ridge was colder than usual. Deep under the snow-covered surface, hidden beneath layers of stone and time, something had started to move. It began with a soft vibration, too gentle for most to notice. But birds flew early that morning. The ground animals stayed close to shelter. Something was shifting, something older than memory. Emra stood at the edge of a new platform, now high above the first chamber, where Earthfire had awakened. The chamber had grown. Where once there were only glowing walls and silent systems, now long pathways had opened, revealing hidden doors, deep tunnels, and humming passageways. It felt like the inside of a living being, quiet, powerful, and aware. System status, 47% activated. The voice of Earthfire said gently beside her. She turned. "What happens when it reaches full?" "Observation, protection, adjustment, not war." "No," Earthfire replied. "Only reflection." She paused. "Of what?" "Of how far humanity has come." Emra looked at the screens around her. The system was showing colonies in calm, people continuing their days, unaware of what had nearly reached them. But now, more lights on the map were blinking mountain sensors, forest nodes, underground communication routes. They weren't opening for attack. They were reconnecting to something older, something that had once united Earth before peace had made it sleep. In the distance, beyond the snowcaps and clouds, one of Earth's sky mirrors began to shift. It was a wide, floating ring that hovered high in the atmosphere, invisible to normal satellites. Its purpose had once been to control sunlight during early terraforming experiments. Now, after centuries of rest, it turned slightly and caught light once more. Its surface glowed on, sent a signal toward the moon. On the far side of the moon, where few humans had ever walked, another structure awakened. It had no name in modern records. It looked like a smooth silver hill, except it was entirely hollow inside. As the signal reached it, the hill slowly unfolded like a flower, revealing a tall pillar covered in blinking points of light. Each point was connected to a sensor on Earth, forming a complete map of the planet's life systems. From above, to anyone watching, Earth was no longer quiet. It was alive in new colors. In space, Kurix's ships had backed away slightly. They didn't send more probes. They simply hovered, watching. Back in the Earthfire core, Emra received new data. Images filled her screens. Large sections of land were opening gently, carefully. From the deserts, towers rose from under the sand. In the rainforests, panels lifted from the ground and stretched toward the sun like plants waking up. The technology was not meant to fight. It was meant to shield, to observe, to communicate. The most surprising part was what lay beneath the oceans. System node detected. Deep Ocean Vault 3. Earthfire reported. Age older than surface records. A small viewing platform displayed a live image. Deep under the sea, a large circular structure had opened, releasing long light-filled strands like roots. They moved slowly, wrapping around older sunken satellites, pulling in forgotten tools, cleaning, repairing. The ocean glowed in shades of soft blue and green. "What is it doing?" Emra asked. "Preparing," Earthfire said. "For what?" "For Earth to be seen again." Emra walked quietly to another console. She placed her hand gently on the surface. The system responded not with cold metal, but with warmth. She thought back to history books that taught her Earth had once been a loud place filled with pride, conflict, and power, and then it chose silence. Not because it was afraid, but because it had grown. She whispered, "Maybe the galaxy forgot that peace takes strength too." The voice replied, "Peace requires memory, and Earth remembers." At that moment, one final chamber opened behind her. Inside was not a weapon, not a machine, but a tree, tall, glowing gently, its leaves humming with light. Earthfire had preserved the first seed from the first human colony, long lost. It had been waiting, in silence, for the moment it could stand under the stars again. Emra stepped inside. The leaves above her moved as if welcoming her home. Outside, watchers from distant systems were receiving strange new signals, images of growth, of energy, of renewal. They did not see destruction. They saw a world wrapped in light, waking from deep rest. Curix received one of these signals. He watched it in silence. One of his officers turned to him. "What should we do, General?" Curix didn't answer right away. He looked again at the Earth, now shining with patterns no one had seen before. Finally, he spoke softly, not with fear, but with something closer to respect. "Wait, just wait. Something is coming, but it is not war." And for the first time, the stars around Earth felt warmer. Not because of power, but because something ancient, peaceful, and human had decided it was time to rise again. At sunrise. The sky over Earth shimmered with soft colors that didn't come from the sun. Pale blues and gentle golds stretched across the horizon, not painted by weather, but by light, bending through something new above the clouds. People across the world looked up in quiet cities. Children pointed at the sky. In farming towns, elders paused mid-step. Scientists, pilots, artists, and teachers all stood for a moment and stared. No alarms rang. No warnings came. Just the quiet appearance of strange new lights dancing across the sky like threads of silk high above them. Old machines floated, machines that had once been hidden. Their shapes were graceful, not made for destruction, but for watching, guiding, protecting. Earthfire had not only awakened, they had reconnected. In the Earthfire command chamber, Emra stood before a wide, circular panel. It showed the planet as one breathing whole. Lights pulsed across it, not red for danger, but green for readiness, blue for memory, and gold for harmony. The voice returned beside her, clear and calm. "System status, 81%. She turned slowly, watching as more doors opened, revealing parts of Earth's legacy that had not seen air in hundreds of years. Long corridors filled with floating data crystals, voice recordings from the first off-world missions, and handwritten letters from the early days of star travel all preserved here. But now, something new appeared. New presence detected near planetary orbit, the voice said gently. EMRA tapped the console. A smooth screen lifted, showing a small object approaching Earth from deep space. It wasn't part of Curix's fleet. Its shape was different, round, polished, slow. It almost looked like a visitor. The system identified it. Observation, craft, unknown species, peaceful trajectory. She watched carefully. The craft made no attempt to hide, no sudden movements, just a quiet arrival. It simply drifted closer to Earth, as if curious. "Should we respond?" she asked. "No," Earthfire said softly. "Let them see." And so, Earth stayed silent. But above, the sky told its own story. The floating mirrors gently bent the sunlight. High-altitude stations began forming visible pattern symbols, not written in any one language, but using shapes and lights that all intelligent beings could understand. Curiosity, welcome, peace. Down below, in the mountain regions, more Earthfire structures emerged. But these weren't machines, they were gardens. Terraces grown into the sides of cliffs. seeds taken from early colonies, now sprouting after generations of sleep, trees that glowed softly at night, vines that carried messages through touch and light. Each piece of earthfire had been created not only to protect life, but to grow it again if needed. Emra wandered into one of these garden halls. She walked among soft moss, beneath curved glass, and watched tiny flying light small drones shaped like petals move gently from flower to flower. A screen lit up nearby, displaying images from the alien observer craft. They were watching, silently recording, scanning not for weapons but for meaning, and they were finding it, because Earth was not hiding. Earth was showing. The system whispered to her, "When we were first built, the galaxy was loud. We were told to wait, to stay quiet, to speak only when silence was broken." She nodded slowly. "And now the silence has been broken." "Yes," it replied, "but not with noise, with forgetting." Emra understood. The galaxy hadn't feared Earth, it had forgotten Earth, forgotten what it was capable of, not only in strength but in stillness. She spoke softly to herself. "Maybe it's time we remind them." That evening, a soft signal was sent from the moon base. One simple line of sound, stretched out into the stars. It didn't shout, it didn't demand, it simply said, "We are still here." In space, the observation craft turned slightly, aimed a gentle beam of light toward Earth, and paused. A moment later, it returned the signal, not in words but in music, a simple tone, followed by another, like a quiet conversation between two old friends, meeting for the first time again. Curix, still in orbit with his fleet, received the transmission. He listened carefully. "It's a song," one of his officers said, confused. "Yes," Curix answered, quietly, "and I think we are the ones being taught." He didn't order the fleet forward. He didn't send more probes. He just stood still, looking at Earth, and wondered how he had missed this side of them for so long. In the Earthfire chamber, Emra walked to the central tree again. The leaves swayed gently, glowing in rhythm with the signals passing through. The planet's veins. No threats, no fear, just memory. And somewhere in the deep quiet of the stars, more eyes were turning toward Earth, not with suspicion, but with wonder. The silence had ended, but what followed was not war, it was awakening.